Brian Fritz, Tony Mejia here, ProBasketballNews.com. We just got done watching the Orlando Magic fall to the Chicago Bulls at the Amway Center here in Orlando. Tony, talk about this one a little bit because very entertaining first quarter, but as the game went on, you could really see a discrepancy, I think, between these two teams.
Well, I think so. The Bulls took a 17-point lead. We're standing in their locker room. They're long gone on their journey to Atlanta to play a Hawks team for the second consecutive, not consecutive, but second time this week. And what you saw from the Bulls tonight is a big boy team. The Magic want to strive to get there, but at this point, Chicago is accelerated in their learning curve. They didn't have off-season scrutiny or off-season chaos or off-season just drama. And I think at this point, considering the drastic discrepancy in the scene in the Bulls locker room and the Magic locker room, where Dwight Howard and Ryan Anderson were having a powwow, and here in the Bulls they were openly celebrating with smiles on their face because at this point they've beaten the Atlanta Hawks and the Orlando Magic same week. Now Atlanta again, and it's a team that's 7-1 for a reason.
After the game, you talked about Dwight Howard talking with Ryan Anderson. You spoke with both of them. Tell us what they said about their private conversation, or somewhat private conversation.
It's interesting because in this league you rarely see that in a locker room. Maybe you see it on a team plane or where nobody sees it, or before games when there is no availability. But the fact is, the media was let in there and huddled at Dwight Howard's locker were Ryan Anderson and Dwight Howard. And the deal was that Howard was approached by Ryan Anderson, who had his worst game of the season, and asked, what do you want from me as the other big on this team? Because clearly Stan Van Gundy was not happy with Ryan Anderson's performance. Ryan Anderson's energy suffered because he was missing shots, and that happens to shooters. But in Anderson's estimation, that can't happen if they're going to bestow so much responsibility on him. I mean, at this point, he's been their second best player. He had an off night, and good for Magic fans in that he's accepting responsibility for his role as a major player on this team, and just wanted to hash things out with Dwight Howard before they leave for a 4-game road swing, which ironically opens in Anderson's hometown of Sacramento.
And it was funny because as this game went on, the Magic tried to get into it, but in the fourth quarter, they got dominated on the glass. The Bulls really took advantage, racking up offensive rebound left and right. And that's where I think Dwight was getting on, or spoke with Ryan Anderson a lot. And even Dwight talked about later, everybody in this team has to make sacrifices at some point. And I don't think it was singling one guy out, but at the same time, that is a big thing, in that they've got to be able to control the glass late in the game. And for Anderson, if he's not hitting shots, he has to find another way to contribute. Even J.J. Redick is a guy that he's expected to hit shots, and he was a guy that had an off night as well.
Yeah, Ryan Anderson wasn't even on the court in the fourth quarter for most of it because Stan Van Gundy appeared to have let him into his doghouse, because in the first half he did struggle, and you could see his level of play where normally he's scrappy and chasing loose balls just wasn't there. And the Magic can't beat a Chicago Bulls team playing 4-on-5, and obviously Ryan Anderson has been great, so we're not trying to disparage him, but he had an off night, and responsibly he's looking for ways as to how to accept responsibility and make his teammates better, make himself better for his teammates. From Orlando's standpoint, they got Dwight Howard off early, and sometimes that's an Achilles heel for this team, because when Howard going 6 of 8 in the first quarter, everybody else struggling, nobody else got it going, and that was a problem all night. You mentioned the 6 offensive rebounds in the fourth quarter. The Bulls just made it happen, and then defensively, they were able to throw Omer Asik, Taj Gibson, Carlos Boozer, all at Dwight Howard. If these teams meet in an Eastern Conference semis or a first-round series, they're probably the best equipped to handle Dwight Howard if he's still in Orlando.
One more thing about this game. Stan Van Gundy afterwards was talking about his team, and he said, what happened up in Detroit where we lost there, that's going to happen this season. But tonight, he has felt like his team didn't work hard enough, and he said, we got our asses kicked. And he said, I've got to get with these guys, and I got to see if they want to put in the work. And that's the big question he has for his team. He believes they do, but it's one thing in believing, and it's another to see it from the players themselves and get them to do it on the court.
Yeah, I was talking to Chicago's Tom Thibodeau, so I missed the Stan Van Gundy press conference. From my understanding is he said that multiple times that Orlando is not on Chicago's level.
Yes.
Elaborate on that.
Yeah, he did. He was talking about, hey, you know what? We know where we're at right now. We're just not at their level yet. Talking about the Bulls being contenders for the NBA championship, and said we've got our work to do, and we've got a lot of work that we have to put in. He talked about how the offense really didn't click. He thought only two people really helped move the ball and help the offense, and those two guys, believe it or not, were Glenn Big Baby Davis and Chris Duhon. So that's one of those things too, where we talk about the offensive glass, but there's a problem with moving the ball on offense. Jameer Nelson has not looked good. The Magic had a lot of turnovers in this game, especially late. They had trouble getting the ball into the post to Dwight Howard, especially in the second half, where there was 4 or 5 turnovers trying to get him the ball down in the paint. So there were some problems there that have to be handled from the offensive standpoint of getting into their offensive sets and not turning the ball over.
Yeah, no question. And Chicago obviously makes things more difficult than most teams in the league. But it was a genius defensively with the schemes. They've got the personnel to get it done. But Orlando was sloppy. And you see guys really stepping up to the plate and accepting responsibility. Stan Van Gundy unhappy with Glenn Davis's shot selection earlier in the week. You saw Baby rein it in. You saw him being closer to the basket. You saw him respond with 10 rebounds very early. And that's where Orlando needs to go right now, especially when they're going on the road, especially with the cloud hovering of uncertainty, whether Dwight's going to be here or not. At this point, it looks like Howard's going to be here at least through the All-Star break. So you got to make work the best it possibly can.
Real quick, when talking about Dwight Howard, another rumors come out about him, the latest being that Golden State is interested, and they're putting out the full court press to Orlando to say they'd like to get him, even knowing that they wouldn't get the guarantee, even if it meant only renting him for the season and trying to convince him to sign an extension after the year. Obviously, either Steph Curry or Monta Ellis would have to be involved. And from my standpoint, this sounds more like agent talk, trying to get more rumors out there to get the real teams that are interested in Dwight to step up and try to make a move right now, because Golden State, while they might want him, to me, they don't have the pieces to get that done, and they'd have to involve 1, if not 2 more teams to even do anything to get Orlando a good price. And plus, on top of that, I don't think there's any way Dwight Howard would sign an extension with Golden State.
Yeah, they're trying to sell him on being the spokesman for Yahoo and all the other Silicon Valley internet stuff. Great. I'm sure Dwight will appreciate that. Bottom line is, Warriors have new ownership. They're trying to sell their fans in the Bay Area that they're going to leave no stone unturned in building a championship basketball team. Mark Jackson's in there trying to change the personality of that team. So great. It's wonderful PR for a Warriors fan to open up the San Francisco Chronicle and say, hey, look, we're trying to go after Dwight Howard. That's fantasy land, because they don't have the pieces to get it. Even the best piece that they have, Stephen Curry, right now is fighting through chronic ankle injuries. So Otis Smith wouldn't touch him and shouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. But it just speaks to the drama that Orlando has to face night after night, where after their center made a trade demand that he has not rescinded, all these stories become viable. And so long as it doesn't become a distraction on the court, and it hasn't, the Magic will push through it.
Elsewhere around the NBA, an interesting game tonight where the Knicks needed heroics late from Carmelo Anthony, that being a three-pointer to be able to beat the Washington Wizards of all teams, which has yet to win and looks like the worst team in the league. And we sit here and we talk about the Knicks, and people thought maybe they would be contenders this year. It doesn't look like it the way that they're playing right now. I know they've battled some injuries and still are. A couple guys banged up a little bit, but they need to change the identity there, I think, a little bit more. And that's where the questions comes to the coach of Mark D'Antoni and whether or not is he the right fit. I don't expect him to go anywhere this year, but if things don't change with the style, with the amount of talent that they have there, you'd have to think that he would be the guy they look at maybe for a change.
He's a lame duck coach at this point with no years on his contract beyond this one. You're absolutely right on the identity. They don't have one. They're Carmelo Anthony's team at this point, with Amari Stoudemire playing second fiddle and Tyson Chandler trying to find his way. They're a team that doesn't play defense. It was 40-24 Washington at one point, and I'm sure guys like Mark Berman and Frank Isola, who cover that team daily, were out getting the vultures ready, because I don't think that Mike D'Antoni lasts if the Knicks are still under 500 come Valentine's Day. I think he's gone.
And last thing I wanted to talk about was out west, where people talk about who's going to be the favorites. You got the Oklahoma City Thunder. They've looked good so far this season. They do have a couple of losses, but they had a blowout win tonight over the Houston Rockets. The LA Lakers, people wondering, can they be true contenders with the makeup of their team right now? Sure. But right now, the best team out west, the Portland Trailblazers, and also you look at the Denver Nuggets, and this is one of the things we talked about with this season in particular. You need deep benches, and you see how well that they're playing because they're able to throw 10, 11 guys out of teams each and every night.
Yeah, even with the size of Andrew Bynum and Pau Gasol playing pretty well, even with Kobe Bryant fighting through his injuries and giving them a presence, the Blazers still wore down the Lakers. And granted, Kobe Bryant's record's now 6-24 at the Rose Garden, and before that, the other venue that they had. But the bottom line is, they never play well in Portland. Portland moves on from that and now moves forward in technically the favorites role in the Western Conference, and they can do that because they can throw Wes Matthews, Nick Batum, Gerald Wallace at your opposing wings and wear you down just all game long, and LaMarcus Aldridge really stepping up.
Yeah, absolutely. So keep it here on ProBasketballNews.com for all the latest on the NBA. Plus, we'll be doing more reports as the season goes on, in particular from the Orlando Magic, and covering them and see what happens not only with the team but with their big man, Dwight Howard. For Tony Mejia, I'm Brian Fritz for ProBasketballNews.com.